Good evening, and thank you to all our City Council candidates for coming out this evening. We greatly appreciate this. On behalf of the Loveland Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Loveland Association, really are proud that you're here and appreciate you participating. I'd also like to turn to the audience and tell you thank you for you folks coming out, again on behalf of the Chamber and the Downtown Loveland Association, for your support tonight, and certainly learning more about the candidates and where they stand on business issues. I think this will be the key piece about this particular forum, from what you've seen in the other forums, is we are really focusing on issues dedicated to business. The 4 questions that we're asking, or that we'll be taking from the audience, we would ask that you keep those focused around the business topic. It can be whatever you feel is important, but we are going to be selecting those and looking for questions that tie to the business community. So without any further ado, I would like to turn it over to our moderator, Kristen Taddy, with the Northern Colorado Business Report. And Kristen, thank you very much for moderating.
Thank you, Brian. Well, we will start with opening remarks, and each candidate will have 1 minute for that. Next, the candidates will be asked to answer 6 questions that were prepared by the Downtown Loveland Association and the Loveland Chamber of Commerce. And again, the candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each of those questions. During this question and answer period, runners will be collecting questions submitted by the audience on note cards that were supplied, and 4 audience questions will be selected, read, and the candidates will again have 1 minute to respond to each of those. We will then move on to closing remarks, 1 minute again, and the time limits throughout the forum will be strictly enforced. And we will also ask that the audience members refrain from applause or any other signs of support or opposition. We would thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and begin. And Jan, we'll just start with you for your opening remarks.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. I am Jan Brown. I have lived in Loveland for 24 years and was previously a small business owner. I have 3 children and 6 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I am a strong support of business in our community. I feel that it is very important for the vibrancy of this community. I owned a small business downtown, and I have supported a lot of different downtown organizations, and I sat on many boards and commissions. I was also on City Council for 8 years and took a 2-year break, and now I am running again. I'm passionate about this community, and I feel that it's very important that we continue with the quality of life that we now have.
Hello, my name is Darrell Klassen. What brought me to Loveland in the year 1970 was my broadcasting was my career. And when I gravitated from being on the production or the camera side of broadcasting and wanted to enter ownership, and once I had seen Loveland, there was only one place. It took me 9 years from the time that I first saw Loveland to get the radio stations bought. Anyway, that was my career. I owned the stations for 13 years. I'm happy to say that it was a nice bridge between the public sector and the private sector. It was licensed by the Federal Communications Commission, of course. And during that time, I was very proud to have been a member of the Chamber of Commerce for 13 years. I was a member of the Board of Directors for 8 years on that particular endeavor. Also, during my station ownership and shortly thereafter, I was elected to the Board of County Commissioners in Larimer County, where I served for 8 years, and was proud to have been on the first Loveland Economic Development Corporation.
Sorry to interrupt. We have a cell phone that is on in here, so if you have a cell phone, if you would turn it off, it's interfering with the broadcast that's going on over the television. So if you could turn those off, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Was my time up, or did I have more?
Your time was up.
Thank you.
All right. Adam, we'll move on.
Hello, my name's Adam Konecki. I'm running here for City Council in Ward 1. I've lived in Loveland for 21 years. And as I did at the last forum, I'll go ahead and answer everybody's first question. I'm 23 years old. Being that I've lived in Loveland practically all my life, I've really had an opportunity to see the town grow up around me, to see the new businesses that have come in, and unfortunately some of the old businesses that have left. And I really feel that this gives me a unique perspective as to what Loveland's future holds and what would be the best way of achieving that goal. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Joan Schaefer?
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber and to the Downtown Loveland Association for sponsoring the event tonight. Forums like this are the best way to let voters learn about the candidates, so I really appreciate the opportunity. My husband and I both are small business owners in downtown, and I'm running for Loveland City Council because I believe the voters of Ward 2 deserve a choice. And 2 years ago, I and some other folks in town worked to pass campaign finance reform because we believe that greater participation in government is good for all. I still believe that. I think that as a result of the reform, Loveland is moving to a city government that represents all of the people, and I want to be a part of that. And I think tonight, with the number of candidates we have here, is representational of that. I think Loveland is also moving towards a more competent and fiscally responsible government, and I believe that I would further that on this council. I believe that this great city of ours deserves a local government that looks to the wants and needs and dreams of all the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Bob Schneider. I'm running for City Council for Ward 2. I've been a Loveland resident for 14 years. Been married to my wife, Gail, for 18. We have two wonderful daughters, Maria and Sarah. When we started our business almost 10 years ago, one of the first things I did was to join the Chamber of Commerce. I didn't know that there was any magic in that. I just knew I needed to meet people to help my business thrive. As it turns out, I get very involved in the Chamber of Commerce as well as other community organizations. I've served on the board of directors and also chairman in 2005. Through those community connections, I've met many experts in many areas and feel well connected to many areas of the community, and I'm just looking to serve at the next level in the community that I live in. I do believe in Loveland. I think it's a jewel of northern Colorado, and look forward to serving the citizens of Loveland and the residents of Ward 2.
Thank you, Bob. And Joseph Hertwig?
Good evening. My name is Joe Hertwig, resident of Loveland for 8 years. My background is graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison with a degree in construction administration. From there I went into the Navy, active duty. I was a pilot, had various jobs while I was in the Navy. I was a flight instructor, division officer, safety officer, accident investigator. From there, I went right into the airlines, where I have been for the past 20 years. My basic philosophy on government and how it deals with business is the government job to basically stay out of business's way as much as possible, and to support the business community. And I see that as keeping taxes low, fees low, and regulations as low and as minimal as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
My name is Hugh McKean. I'm running for City Council in Ward 3. My wife and I have lived here now for about 12 years. We've got two small kids, and I said before that we're very invested in Loveland. One of the biggest things that I think we see in Loveland and being invested in it is the delight in how vibrant downtown is and how much diversity we have in business across the field in Loveland. And we like to watch it as it grows, and I think that that's one of the things that I'm sitting here among a bunch of people who want to see Loveland grow and thrive, and I think that's really a delight when you get down to it, that we're all willing to serve and we're all willing to kind of put our ideas forward. One of the things I think really in business in Loveland has lately been just watching that really we have a nice balance. We have a really good spread of businesses across the board, and we've got a Loveland that's really coming back to what I think we all hoped that it would be 10, 12, 15 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh. And Kathleen McGowan.
I'm Kathleen Mcgowan. I've lived in Loveland for 9 years. I'm a local attorney. I live here with my husband, Jim. The reason I'm running for City Council in Ward 4 is that in talking with members of the community and of my ward, I believe that people are seeking candidates who are independent, who will represent their interests, who will strike a balance in City Council. I think that I have skills that will meet that need, and I'd like to step up to the plate and serve the residents of Ward 4 and the residents of Loveland in City Council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and move right into the prepared questions. Please remember to keep your responses to 1 minute, and I would like to remind the audience that the supplied note cards are for you to submit your own questions, so be writing those down and keeping questions in mind. Runners will be by shortly. Question 1, we'll start with Jan, and then we'll move down the line from there. How would development in downtown Loveland impact the city as a whole? And in your view, what is the most appropriate funding mechanism for this development?
Well, I'm a strong advocate for downtown. I believe that development in downtown is very important and that we need to be able to structure it so that it is a work-live community. The arts are very important for downtown. The cultural part of downtown is just really started developing here, and I feel that it's very important to support that. We are an arts community and culture, and we have a wonderful museum. Our library is down here, the Chelson Center, but we need to develop housing and jobs for this area and increase the density to be able to support the businesses that do move in. So that's it.
Thank you, Jen. Darrell Klassen?
Same question.
Same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
The city of Loveland has to be the pump primer for downtown redevelopment. In that regard, a lot of work has been going into the planning to create what is called a hard improvement project, in which their primer is the Brookings Institute 12 Steps to Revitalization. It's a great plan. We should follow it. However, I see that step 7 in this Brookings Institute is called Create an Urban Entertainment District. It tells you to creates a thing called walkable urbanism. And you build arenas, performing arts centers, stadiums, movie theaters, restaurants, especially retail, festivals, arts, and nightclubs. I don't find a parking garage in that assortment. And I think that until that focus is correct, we will spend $34 million possibly and miss the target. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam?
How would downtown development impact the city? Well, I think any time that you can bring in businesses to a city, you're going to impact the whole economy of the town. Anytime that you can bring a job in and hire somebody, he's going to get paid, and he's going to go out and he's going to spend that money in the community. The entire community benefits from it. It's my understanding through talking with people that there are already some funding mechanisms in place. I think we need to draw on those first before we start looking at how are we going to fund this, where else are we going to get money. And I think the biggest way to provide an incentive down there would be to cut taxes on those businesses and to cut government regulations and allow them to compete better. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer? Same
Thank
question.
First, I'm a strong advocate for downtown. Both my husband's business, mine, is located downtown, and it's a big reason why we moved to this community. We really appreciate what downtown has to offer. I think the downtown represents the heart of our community, and it says a lot about and how we develop it says a lot about how serious we are in attracting businesses and new residents to the entire city. So I think it's really critical that we focus there. Any lasting solution will have to make economic sense. So I look primarily to the private sector for funding, but the city will have to hold up its end of the bargain too and make sure that we provide the kind of infrastructure necessary to attract private investment. Given our present economy, it seems like it might be a good time to address some of those infrastructure concerns. And with 30% of our citizens in the construction and building trades, I think that we could do some work down there to get those folks involved and working again. I think looking at bonds to do that infrastructure work is something we have to seriously consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. Downtown is certainly important to the city. Of course, I want to see all areas of our community thrive, but downtown areas have a special significance, I think, for all cities, and having a thriving downtown just speaks volumes about where the community is going. So I don't think, specifically to the question, I don't think any funding mechanism, any one thing can revitalize downtown. There's a variety of things that need to happen. I think maintaining the cash-based philosophy, the pay-as-you-go philosophy is very good. It's very conservative, and that's certainly the heart of the things that we need to, that's the philosophy of where we need to go in that development. Ideally, we'll see a lot of private partners that will emerge that can do some of these redevelopment and these new projects. And of course, the city needs to invest in the appropriate infrastructure so that the redevelopment can happen and get out of the way of private business.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hertwig?
I think downtown development is extremely important because development, of course, equals jobs, which equals income, which also equals a reduction in poverty. It's important to have a strong core because a strong core leads to a stronger community. Speak of infrastructure. Infrastructure is already there. There could be some improvements, some updating, but the basic skeleton, basic core is already there. And I'll see us utilize the space that we do have. I don't like the idea of leaving empty spaces in the middle of town as it grows outward. That's just leaving sores in a healthy community, otherwise healthy community. And talking about the parking garage, if there was a real need for a parking garage and the businesses and business community sees that real need, they should build it. I believe that majority of what happens should be private funding.
Thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
Your question had two big parts. How do we impact Loveland as a whole? How do we finance it? And I echo what I hear up here as well, that there's no one finance mechanism, taking the last part first, that works. I think there are sales tax rebate systems that you can use, but I think that you have to look at that. I mean, if anybody listened or watched the meeting last night, and certainly when we look at our budget and how well we've worked forward, we have to use every tool we have in the box. The big thing, I think, is that development in downtown is a redevelopment. And certainly from most of the conversations I've had, it's finding the best way to use existing properties to do some of the things the city's already done, and in combining properties to make them more attractive to developers. I like to see that kind of innovation when we come to it, and I think that we're moving forward on the right track of taking a lot of what's existing there and making it better.
Thank you, Hugh. And Kathleen Mcgowan?
I think what's most pressing on everyone's minds is the state of the economy, and I think when we're talking about that, it comes down to business development, and so we have to keep in mind that we need to be business friendly in redeveloping downtown. And I'm going to take the stand that we are going to do it, not how would it develop or how would it improve the city, but how it will. And certainly it's going to increase rents and values, draw investment, help with rehabilitating or rehabbing buildings and infill. It'll increase offices and residential. It'll bring in new sales tax dollars. It'll keep sales tax dollars. It'll help fund the URA, which is not doing very well. As merchants benefit, so will the downtown area. As the downtown area benefits, so will Loveland as a whole. It might also be wise for us to consider clusters of businesses that benefit from cross-selling. And it certainly would increase the pride in the city and prevent deterioration and attract businesses in general.
Thank you, Kathleen. We will move on to question 2, and we'll start with Darrell Klassen for this one. Now, how would you suggest the downtown area work toward a proper balance between residential, retail, professional, and commercial activity?
I'd like to rephrase the question just a bit. A balance between residential, retail, professional, and commercial activity and entertainment. Referring back again to Step 7 of the Brookings Institute. Step 7, create an urban entertainment district. How to create this balance is to simply put a focus on destinations, reasons to come downtown. How to create that balance? Some of the things that the city has already accomplished, for example, in the Lincoln Place, in which there were $3 million worth of incentives in one form or another that were applied to that, supposedly as a catalyst project. You must do the things that will create densities in downtown, densities that will create, in a sense, its own market, which will help, of course, its success. So how would this city work toward a proper balance between those? To provide incentives to all the things that will help create densities.
Great. Thank you, Darrell. Adam?
I'm not quite sure what constitutes a proper balance or who determines what that is. Right now, Loveland's not at the level of, say, Denver, where you have a commuter problem getting people into the DTC. And maybe having more of a workforce down there would help with that. I think Loveland is still very much a small community. You can go 6 or 7 blocks and be out of downtown. I would almost rather see some of that residential space down there be turned into commercial space and be used to provide for more jobs. Obviously, you're not going to locate a factory in the downtown area, so I think downtown really will always be limited to retail, restaurants, office space. And I don't know if there are any plans out on the horizon for any bit kind of apartments like the Lincoln Place.
Thanks, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
Yes, hi. Sorry, I left that on if it was bothering people. So I think that we have to make it easier to get in and out of our core areas, and including downtown, and to remind everybody that the days of end-to-end manufacturing are pretty much gone in our community, and that's probably not the kind of jobs we're going to bring in. But I think that we need to work towards having a more walkable community. I don't think we have that now, and I think that can really be done in downtown and bring business with it. The vision I have is to create a way that people can live here even if they work somewhere else, which 45% of our community does, and for others to come here and work. We need a regional solution to a regional problem, and downtown's part of the greater region. And in my discussions with residents of the ward and throughout the city, I've found a good deal of excitement about bringing passenger rail back in, and I think that's something we need to consider.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. I'll start with, I echo what Adam's remarks. I'm not sure what the proper balance is either. I've tried to find that magic number. Maybe it's in the Brookings Institute report. I haven't had the privilege to read that yet, but I think the key is increasing those densities. As has been said, my understanding is downtown has some of those lowest residential densities in the community, and I understand by increasing that residential density, we're going to have more retail and restaurants that will grow up to support the residents. I also believe that more primary jobs anywhere in the community will enhance the community, but certainly downtown, that's going to add to that density and add to the support of the retail and the restaurants and create those destinations. But again, I guess the key to me is for the city government to remove any of those obstacles, make it easier for the private business to do the development and create those private-public partnerships where it makes sense and where it's strategic.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hertwig?
Excuse
excuse me. I think predominantly should be a market-driven approach. Like I agree with what you say. I don't know what the magic balance is between the entertainment, shopping, etc. So it should be market-driven. It should be the businesses that they're the ones that have the resources to do the studies, to see what's worked in other communities, what could possibly work here. Again, you need to give people a reason to come downtown. Need the entertainment, need the shopping. Increasing the residential density also would be a good thing. As the population is aging and has aged, people are moving out of the suburbs now and going back into the cities because there are services in the cities that they don't have, that are within walking distance that they don't have out in the suburbs, that they may have to get in the car and drive half an hour or an hour depending on how far out they are. So there's that part of the population. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Hugh. Hugh McKean?
I think that when we look at how we're going to create a balance, how we're going to actually impose our view on things, that's also a bus that I tend to get off of. I think there's a nice balance down there as it is. You have professional corporations, commercial, retail establishments. You have a nice mix of what's going on. I said before, I think we're all seeing things that we like in downtown. One of my comments earlier too was that years ago it was pawn shops and this and that, and I think we're seeing more restaurants, more reasons for people to come down. I don't think that the walkability of downtown is something we should overlook either. I think that there needs to be an ease of moving around, which might indeed take a little bit of the stress off the parking. One of the things, I guess, is that when we talk about how would we do this, again, every incentive, every kind of option needs to be on the table, and what works at the time is going to be something that has to be figured out then. Thanks.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathleen Mcgowan?
Excuse me, my mic was off. Let's try that again. Research does show that the most important thing to begin with is increasing residential density. For instance, we are, I believe, currently at about 2 units per acre, and to have a thriving downtown, we need to increase that density to 25 units per acre. So that gives you an indication of how severe the need is to increase residential density in our downtown area. And I think as we do that, then as a natural progression, it will bring into balance commercial and retail functions within the city, because as we increase residents, then they will be using those types of businesses, and it will then put the other things into balance. I agree with most of what else has been said. In particular, Ms. Schaefer mentioned transportation. I think that's critical.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. We will move on to question 3, and we will start with Adam Konecki. Now, what is the... Oh, I'm so sorry, Jan. I didn't mean to forget you. Jan, after you.
Of course, I agree with almost everything that's been said. We have several groups that have been working for several years on things for downtown. The downtown team has been together for almost 3 years, and they have a whole package of different ways to finance that we're working on. The parking garage, I do not think has always been something we felt needed to be built by itself. All of those things will be partnerships. The density, I think, for residential is very important. To have a walkable downtown is important. And all of that working together will bring the jobs that are also needed. So I think that it's a very large package. To say we need this, or this is not an answer for it.
Great. Thank you, Jan. Sorry about that. Right, now we'll move on to question number 3, and we will start with Adam. What is the proper role for city government in the development of downtown?
I think the proper role of government is the same regardless of the circumstances. As the Declaration of Independence states, governments are established to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is government's role. And we on council need to ask ourselves, are we abiding by this? Are we holding to these founding principles? Are we providing a means for business to come into the downtown and to compete? Or are we regulating it so much that it is getting in the way of business being able to thrive and driving businesses away? I don't believe the role of the city government changes to fit each particular situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joan?
I think that I've said before, the city has a role to play, but ultimately will be the private sector that really makes or breaks the downtown. And I think the city government should facilitate consensus building to support appropriate taxpayer investment in infrastructure, transportation, and beautification projects. And I think the city government has a role in ensuring obstacles for development are lessened, that incentive programs for existing property owners, small businesses, and new employer opportunities result in the desired outcomes. As I said before, I think this may be a really good time for us to make an investment in those infrastructure investments now. I think also we've got a great city staff that works particularly in the economic development area, and I think we need to encourage them to maintain serving as high functioning and be fully engaged in regional planning processes so that Loveland is poised to capitalize on larger efforts to bring sound economic growth to the region.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. Proper role for city government in downtown, as was said before, kind of anywhere, is somewhat limited. As I was going through this, I wrote down kind of just a bunch of describing words, but I mean, we should be a partner, somewhat of a clearinghouse for information and ideas, a collaborator, a conduit for consistent vision and message. And if we want to facilitate the growth and the redevelopment of downtown. Certainly want to remove any barriers that are in the way of businesses expanding and redeveloping. And, of course, we need to assure that there's good access, mobility, and a safe feeling and a true safety in the downtown area.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph?
Thank you. I believe any government, whether it's local, state, federal, has two purposes and two purposes only. First purpose is safety. That would be the police, the fire, and ambulance. Second is to maintain infrastructure. So to that end, the job of the City Council would be to make a more favorable tax structure for businesses to come into our community, to build and maintain the infrastructure that we have, to limit the regulation, just basically to reduce obstacles. It's the private sector's job, to create and to build. The government is only there to help, assist, stay out of the way, whatever, just minimal interference.
Thank you, Joseph. Hugh?
I echo that. I think that the government's job is to remove as many hurdles as they possibly can and to let the private sector do what it needs to do. And I've had this discussion several times. I think so many people have a different vision of what downtown would look like in their ideal world. And I guess the way that I'm looking at it as a prospective council member is I see the council as the arbiter. Not to impose their vision on downtown, but to sit and listen and to receive the ideas that people come to council with for what they would like to develop, what they would like to bring to the city, and make the best decision they can. It's not the council's job, as I see it, to impose their vision, their view, but to sit back and really look at all the options. And of course, we don't have all the options today. We don't know what it's all going to look like. But I'm encouraged by the things that I see coming down the pike.
Thank you, Hugh. And Kathleen?
In keeping with what's been said, I would agree for the most part, but also to clarify, the city does have a comprehensive master plan schedule of objectives that speak directly to this, and it includes such things as developing economic programs and basically working with other arms such as workforce, NCEDC, the Loveland Downtown Association, the Downtown Loveland Association, the Chamber in particular, and many other groups. And I think that the city's function is to continue to work along those lines in an advisory capacity, and not in a controlling way, but to take the benefits of what the city can effectuate and apply it for the benefit of the city. I think our role, city's role, is not to control, but to be more advisory.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jan Brown.
Well, when I came on to council in 1999, and one of my first goals, because I was a small business owner downtown, was to help pull together a group to begin to work on projects for downtown. And out of that came Lincoln Place, but just to acquire the land and dig the first hole took 3 years. And so these projects are very important, and I believe that the city worked very hard with bringing in partnerships for that to be possible. And it was pretty amazing once it started. And I don't know, I mean, I'd love to see 10 of those down here somewhere so that we could get the density and the great shops that would be able to be on those ground floors. So I think that there are a lot of partnerships already in place, and we'll continue to work on them.
And Darrell Klassen.
I read again from the Brookings Institution statement: downtown revitalization requires a high degree of cooperation and is best achieved when a unique private-public process is used. And they call that walkable urbanism. In the city's role, they must be a facilitator, they must be a pump primer, an organizer in this public-private partnership. But along the way, it is very important to maintain a focus, achieving the desired end for the dollar's investment. Again, I read from the Brookings Institute: this means walkable urbanism, means making certain that visitors can find enough to do for 4 to 6 hours, that residents' daily needs can be comfortably met, and that rents and sales prices continue to justify new construction and revitalization. I bring us back to this focus in which we must create destinations and reasons to come downtown.
Thank you, Darrell. I'm going to pause real quick. If any audience members have their question card, if you could just pass it to the outside aisles so people can come along to pick those up if you haven't already done so. Thank you. We will go right into question number 4, and we'll start with Joan Schaefer on this. The City of Loveland has already made cuts to their 2009 budget, and a preliminary budget for 2010 has been developed. It is likely that cuts may need to be made again. Help us understand how you would arrive to your decision on what cuts to make by explaining what process and values you would use to make difficult decisions.
Well, first I'd like to say that I think that the city staff and the council has done an admirable job with the cuts that have been made. I do have concerns that we went into 2009 with the estimated percentage increase in budget that we did. It was around 3%, 3.9%, I believe. I thought that was, we could have looked at that a little differently, but I'd also like to say that we've been very fortunate in retaining very high quality employees, and I think that we have to be very careful making cuts that affect employees, and we don't want to lose that quality. I think that we also have to make sure that the city remains and the people remain safe and secure. That's a top priority, obviously, from local government. We also have to do our best to maintain the other services that make Loveland such a wonderful place to live, and that's the arts and cultural programs, our playgrounds and parks, the Chilson Center, our library. Those are critical, and particularly in times of economic stress. People need good ways to participate in the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider.
Thank you. Frankly, I like the system that has been used. Of course, as been said, we need to protect those essential city services and do all that we can do to keep our public safe and maintain those services first. After that, as I understand, the process used a department-by-department approach. They looked at areas to consolidate, cut, and ways to create efficiencies within those departments. They're the best ways to do it, from the bottom up. As a counselor, it's important to look at that and understand that process and respect it, but also look in between and make recommendations to do more of that. But those cuts, while they're painful, they need to be fair. That doesn't mean they're equal. And that department-by-department approach is just the best way to go. We have a Citizens Financial Committee that reviews the budget as well, and then it comes to council. So there's a lot of eyes that see this. There's a lot of good minds that are dedicated to working on it, and we just need to encourage that process.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hertwig.
This goes back to my earlier statement that the two purposes of the government, and that's the safety and infrastructure. Everything else is negotiable and up for debate. And any services that end up getting cut by the city or by the government, if there's a big enough need for it, can be taken up by the private sector. If a businessman sees that, hey, there's opportunity here to make a profit and to provide jobs, they can jump right in. Also, input by the community. It's the citizens that have to determine what is important to them. What services do they want from the city beyond the police, fire, rescue, and maintaining roads, power, water. It's up to the people to determine what's important to them beyond that. Again, last thing I would be cutting would be the safety and infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean.
Yeah, Joe and I had a talk about this. That when you go to the kitchen sink, you want the water to come out, and so that's there are basic things the city has to do. They need to patch the potholes. They need to make sure we're safe. I'm amazed at how this process has been arrived at. I sat through the meeting last night and just listened to the whole presentation and thought how remarkable it is that we have people on the city staff who really have done this bottom up. Let's figure out where we can trim. Let's figure out what we can do. I was a contractor to the federal government for years, and I could see all the places that I needed to cut. And certainly I think that's what Don brings when he comes and says, let's take a look at how we're going to make this budget fit. The other thing I took away, I guess, from yesterday especially was that we've preserved the reserves, which I think is another enormous thing. And in times where California is looking for people to borrow money from, we're pretty solid.
Thank you, Hugh. And Kathleen McGowan.
I feel at a distinct disadvantage being at the end of the trail here because so many really critical things have been said about how the budget cuts were reached. And I, too, am somewhat in awe of the process. But I would like to add, in addition to essential services that should be the very last thing considered to be cut, and not at all in my estimation, would be job cuts. And I would like to ensure that before any jobs were cut, that any possible mechanisms for either restructuring or job sharing or other alternatives to cutting jobs would be investigated. I'm not certain to what degree that has happened, but that would be a real concern of mine.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
And Jan Brown?
Well, I believe that we live in a very conservative community, that the city has not gone into debt, and for good reason. And staff has done an incredible job of being able to bring back sensible cuts that needed to be made, and if we need to do that in the future, I believe that they know where those cuts need to be. I'm a strong believer in safety for our community, safety first, and staff will bring us the information that is needed to be able to do the cuts that are necessary if this continues. I believe that every department in this city has done a great job of trying to reel things in as close as we have needed to. and they have done this before. This is not the first recession, and so we have a financial staff that does very well at this.
Thank you, Jan. Darrell Klassen?
There's an old saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we would like to look at our neighbors all around us, even including our own state, including some communities not too far away from us, and when the times were good, and you undertake spending habits, that when the times are good, that when the times are bad, your cuts have to be much more severe. I have been a conservative budgeter all my life, and consequently, if we keep our spending under control, we'll find that when it comes time to make cuts, which is why Loveland, and I give this compliment to councils who have preceded me, who have been conservative budgeters, that when the times regressed, that we didn't have to make as severe cuts. You pick up the paper every morning and you see that Governor Ritter and the legislature has to go find another $300 or $400 or $500 million to take out of the state budget. Talk about Kansas. It's worse. California, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Thanks, Darrell. And Adam Konecki?
I'd like to touch on what Hugh said about when you go in the kitchen and you want the water to come on. I think what's more important than that is that when you go in the bathroom, you want the water to go away.
Well said.
I used up 10 seconds of my time. I think we need to take a very careful look at how we do budget cuts. There's been a lot of talk up here tonight about, how does the city go about creating jobs, while at the same time, how do we cut jobs from the city? So it's kind of a tricky subject in that manner, but the way I look at it is when Americans are forced to tighten up their belts, so must government. And I think we can pretty much unanimously agree that police, fire, and emergency services have to be the last to go. And I think we're a long way from even coming close to having to cut that, and I think that they've done a really excellent job with the budget for 2010.
Thanks, Adam. Now we will move on to question 5, and we'll be starting with Bob Schneider. What role should tourism and conventions play in the Loveland economy, and why?
Tourism and convention is a key sector of our economy, much like manufacturing or retail, any of the other things that go on in our community. So, it's certainly an important piece of the puzzle. No one sector can carry the community. And certainly in these economic times, we should be looking to enhance or exploit any of those sectors, again, to get out of the way and help those sectors grow. To maybe read into what wasn't asked in the question, as opposed to the lodging tax, that's one of the ways that I think that tax can help that segment, which in turn can help the rest of the community just through increased travel, increased retail sales, more sales tax, and just get that second and third turn on the dollar from that tourism and convention community.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hertwig?
Well, by bringing conventions here, you're going to be bringing people here to Loveland, and we can show them what we have to offer. We're more than just an exit off of I-25 on your way to Denver. And by bringing the conventions here, like I say, and showing them what we do have, hopefully it'll bring people back as tourists to enjoy our community as much as we do. The subject of the lodging tax has come up, and of course I'm on record as being against it, contrary to I see what the Chamber of Commerce has just came out with. My feelings on that, I guess, more principle than economic. I just don't like the idea of dumping on people that have no say in what goes on here. Yeah, it's money not coming out of our pocket, but we could also use it as a marketing tool that, hey, we do not have a lodging tax. Stay here.
Thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
Well, I think one of the things we've also seen in recent years are some of the incredible venues we now have. So when you're talking about conventions and tourism, the county in partnership built the Budweiser Event Center. We've got wonderful places where people can gather, can bring groups. One of the other things that I left after the sculpture show this year was remarking on what an incredible venue the sculpture show is. And really, that's bringing people to Loveland specifically. It's bringing people here who have an interest not just in the sculpture show, but in spending time here in Loveland, finding out more about this community over a period of days. When we talk about tourism and conventions, I think we have to look at working with some of those groups too to say, let's keep those people here. Let's keep those people in Loveland, trying to come back each year and making it a destination for them for tourism, for conventions as well.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathleen McGowan.
Well, first, when it comes to the lodging tax, I think that the proof will be in the pudding. The voters will have their say, and that will be that. But I think we have real opportunities for tourism in Loveland, and I think we also have great opportunities to bring a lot of money into Loveland with conventions. Engaging Loveland has actually been involved in bringing some conventions to the area. Back in August, there was the OCTA organization that was estimated to bring 750 to 1,500 delegates. That translates to income. The CSAE conference was 120 conference planets, that visited back in June. There was also another convention at the ranch back in August on historic trails. Need I say more? It's a big benefit to us.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jan Brown.
Well, I am a supporter of the lodging tax. I believe that we need the tourism and we need the dollars to market our community. Not just to have those dollars to market just the community of Loveland, but we have lots of arts. We have the art show, which brings in thousands of people from all over the country. We also have a lot of sports events that could be held here that are not being marketed right now. One, because the city is not in the business of marketing, and we have wonderful ballparks and community venues that could be used and marketed. So I'm a firm believer that we need the tourism dollars to help support this community, that every $100 spent in a hotel could bring $300 into our community. So I am a supporter.
Thank you, Jan. Darrell Klassen.
What role should tourism and conventions play in the Loveland economy? A very important role, but let's realize it should only be a single facet of our diversified economy. We have the opportunity in this community to perhaps be a destination. We are not a destination at this time. Estes Park is a destination. We are a pass-through. And if we can use our lodging tax dollars, should it pass, and convert Loveland from a pass-through to a form of a destination, these dollars would be very well spent and increase the value of our tourism and convention business. But until we're able to stop this pass-through flow, and however we do that is a very complicated and somewhat expensive process, but we're attempting to emphasize and put greater emphasis and greater job creation within our community to add to all our other forms of economy.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam Konecki.
To kind of echo what Darrell just said, I really think that Loveland is a gateway town to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park. One of my close friends' parents just came out to town last week, and that's where they went, was up to the mountains. They didn't stay in Loveland. And my dad, I went to lunch today with my dad, and he brought up a really good point. If we had family that came around right now, I think what needs to happen is Loveland needs to be focused right now on regaining our lost infrastructure, regaining jobs that were lost due to the downturn in the economy and from outsourcing. And I think if I had family that came to town today, I could take them on a tour of the city, and I could show them the empty Ferrero and Davidson buildings. I could show them the empty HP and Agilent buildings, the empty Albertsons building on 34. And along the way, I could point out the little 4-foot hearts on the street corners. I think right now Loveland needs a bigger draw for tourism.
Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
I think tourism should be a bigger part of our community. I'm comfortable with that. I've actually been very fortunate in my life to live in a number of communities in which they were considered to be destination areas. And so I also know some of the pain that comes with that increased tourism, and I understand why we hear some things in the RH line occasionally that say no more people. But I'm an advocate for it. I think it's beneficial. I have clients come to my office fairly routinely who've never been to Loveland before and are surprised by its vitality and the things that we have going on here. I'm very proud to share it with them, the things that we have in our community. Loveland's at the crossroads of and is a pathway, as we've discussed. I think that we have not done enough with the resources that we have along the US 34 and 287 corridors. I think we could do things there to introduce what we have in our community.
Thank you, Joan. We will move on to question number 6, and we'll start with Joseph. Give a specific example of how you would incentivize job creation in the city of Loveland.
Again, going back to my basic philosophy is what the government does, and as far as job incentivization, best thing the government can do is to reduce taxes, reduce regulation, get out of the way of businesses, make it a business-friendly environment where people want to come here and start a business and raise their families and create jobs. Give them the safe environment that they want. It's pretty much just government stay out of the way.
Great, thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
Well, I think that what we've been talking about tonight is very much what are the best incentives. What are the incentives that we can really work on in tough economic times? And we've got these empty properties that Adam kind of mentioned, and one of the ones that has been really on my mind, it's in my ward, and Agilent is sitting there empty. It's sitting there with very few workers. It's got some of the problems that come along with any industrial building. But I've thought for a long time that with what we've seen from Lightning Hybrids, the incentives we've provided them, that there are a lot of remarkably good technology companies for electric vehicles, for other things. And I would like to see Agilent become a tech center, if you will, of our own. Incentivizing job creation there would be encouraging companies to come to Loveland, put themselves together, symbiotic businesses that could really draw on each other's skills and each other's successes in what they're doing. So I'd like to see us use Agilent in those buildings in that way.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathleen Mcgowan?
I did it again. I think we can really benefit from incentivizing businesses. While I'm respectful of the idea that we should allow the market to regulate itself, I think we need to incentivize. I think we ought to take potential businesses, send them over to RMI squared, if they're technologically natured businesses, to incubate them, utilize all the resources that are available, go in accordance with the Loveland Economic Development Policy, show them the things that might be available to them, such as relief from some taxes, permit fees, CEFs, things of that nature. There are a lot of particular things that can be done to incentivize businesses, and I think that some of the examples that have been talked about, some have been very successful, and provided that we do our due diligence, then I think it's a good outcome.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jan Brown?
I think that the city staff and city council, along with economic development programs that we have in the community, have worked really hard to bring jobs here with incentives and partnerships. Some of those a lot of those are our medical fields. McKee has had expansions that have been done, and the city has worked with incentives to be able to have our cancer center that is in the hospital, the new hospital that was built, the new doctor's offices. All of those were done with incentive programs that the city already has in place. So I think we're doing a really good job of bringing some really high-paying jobs and incredible medical supplies and doctors and services to our community.
Thank you, Jan. Darrell Klassen.
1 minute. This city has developed $500,000 per year fund that we use for various incentives, and the council has developed strict criteria for awarding these incentives. Believe me, we have companies and coming before us to utilize those, but they must meet our criteria. Last night we got out of here about midnight, maybe a minute or two after midnight, in which there was a real keen decision we had to face last night, and that was relieving some aesthetic spending out at the 2534 intersection and leaving it for the prospect of job creation. So incentives, we just had a groundbreaking out at Centera for a company called Agrarian. They're bringing 400 jobs to this community. We provided some relief there and some incentives. This city has paid great attention to job creation.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam Konecki.
How would I incentivize job creation? I would incentivize it by clearing hurdles and getting government regulations out of the way and making it easier for businesses to come here, to stay here, to thrive here, and to function the way business is meant to function. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joan.
Thank you. I think employers look at a number of things when deciding where to locate their business, and I think Loveland has a lot to offer. And I think we need to make sure that we're letting national and international companies know that what it is that we have to offer. But that said, you know, the HPs are kind of gone. You know, that we had. But when they did come in, they cited the friendliness of our community, and so I think we have to be careful to maintain those things that really bring the quality of life level up in our community. I think we do need to use incentives where appropriate, but I also think we need to be realistic and hard-headed. The days when an HP can come in and transform a community are long past. With 45% of our community commuting out of our community for work, I think that we need to really look at how we make it possible for people to live the length of their careers here, and transportation is key to that.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider.
Thank you. You know, job creation is, to me, at the heart of everything we've talked about tonight. So much of the passion for why I want to get involved in city government. So frankly, we need to do about anything we can to incentivize job creation in our community. As has been said, we've got a lot of vacant buildings around the community. We need to work with our partners at NCEDC, our business development office, local employers, landowners, brokers. Get the word out. We have vacant buildings. We are ready for your jobs. Please bring them. We need to create a streamlined review process. You know, maybe commit to a short-term turnaround on certain building reviews. You know, we certainly need safety in these buildings, but remove the barriers, remove the hurdles, make it simple for a business to come here to do business in Loveland, and just create that can-do attitude of, we're here, we want your jobs.
Thank you, Bob. We will move on to our audience question period now, and we're going to be starting with Hugh. Let's dive right in. Do you support the City Council vote last night to let the Centerra Metro District spend a basic amount, around $9 million, to rebuild the I-25 Highway 34 traffic interchange and hold back about $2.5 million for future Centerra Metro District use? And along with that, would you have supported the full $11.5 million to be spent on enhancing the looks of the interchange?
So again, I get a minute for this. I support the decision because I saw how it was arrived at. No, I would not. I would have voted with Sultan Gutierrez last night. I didn't agree with the presentation. Basically, I think that Loveland was given an image of a bridge in the newspaper, and in that way, I think that the McQuinnys and Centerra signed a deal with the city that wasn't part of their contract, but was certainly part of what the city desires. I don't envy the decision that had to be made last night. I think that that one of the forward-looking parts of that decision was, keep some of this money withheld for job creation. I'm a specifics kind of person. I would like to have known what that money would be used for. And that would have probably made that decision for other councilors as well an easier one, to say we can vote for something instead of simply against it. So I would support that decision because that's the one they came to.
Thanks, Hugh. Kathleen Mcgowan?
Well, I was here last night, and I'm not sure I can answer this in a minute. But quick and to the point, there was a resident who stood up and suggested that if there was $11,500 and the job was going to take $12,000, that we find a way to make it work. That would have been my preferred solution. That said, I probably would have voted with Council Members Sultan Gutierrez because I believe that the job could be done for $11,500. And, there's not much more for me to belabor. That's just how I would have voted based on what I observed last night.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jim Brown?
Well, I would have supported it for several different reasons. One, they're bringing 400 jobs to this community. And I love downtown, and I am passionate about things being done down there. And as soon as a developer brings 400 jobs, I say we do what we have to do. Just because we're we're all in economic hard times. Not just small business, but big business is also. And I think that they did a good job of holding the money so that the money could not be just pulled and spent on doing other things. I believe that I was on council when that plan came in. I believe it should happen the way they say it's going to happen, and that they should pay for everything that they said they were going to pay for. But that during these economic times, we may have to be a little more lenient than if times were different.
Thank you, Jim. Darrell Klassen?
I think I sat in this very chair, at about 11:30 last night and voted yes emphatically for this. This was a question of a $12 million job that was somewhat promised, no question about it. But the choice came down to, in these days, when you're after job creation, and those people out there have brought about 4,000 jobs to this community. When I look at the economic vitality of this community, which is the most important thing to keep us functioning, my first priority is going to be job creation. And the McQuinnys made a request to divert, not to put in their pocket $2,500,000, but to delay doing the aesthetics, although they came in with some additional aesthetics that they were going to do $320,000 worth. But to use that $2.2 million for job creation and job seeking, and they have been as good, their performance has been as good as their promise.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam Konecki?
No, I do not support the decision that was made last night. I would have voted along with Councilman Salt and Gutierrez. The city of Loveland was promised to have this bridge completed as it was originally designed. And as we have seen with Centerra numerous times, they've been able to come in, amend the agreement to their advantage, and move on. And then later on they come back, they amend it again. And at what point do we hold them to anything? At what point do we allow them, or do we stop allowing them to amend their agreements when there's nothing left to amend? So that's where I would stand.
Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
Well, I wasn't here last night, but I did watch the activities and the discussion last night, and I think that I think that something that you had to say, Mr. Kanicki, is really true. I think the McWinneys have, and I agree with you, Jan, they've brought a lot to this community, and at the same time, they've brought a very complex process to bear, and that the council has had to work with, and it's necessary. But I also think that the changes that have been made, many of them have been more advantageous to the McWinney Corporation than they have been to the community. And I think that there's a lot of sentiment in this town that, and that was very visible last night, that people have difficulty with that. And I think that made the decision all the harder. But I think that the bottom line is we need to have an entrance to this community that is appealing, and so I would have not voted for the deal as it went down last night.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. One council meeting I missed in 6 months. I knew this was going to come up. But I was with my kids. It's okay. So I'm going to wing this. I understand the conversation went very long last night, and I can appreciate that. Thinking about that all day, knowing this question was going to come up tonight. I struggle with honoring commitments and the need to be practical. And my desire to have more jobs in our community. There are three somewhat immovable items for my outlook. So how do you balance all those? Give the community what was asked for, be practical, and yet if there is a chance for more jobs, I'm willing to hold back on that. So I would have had to support that. As I understand, the money has to be mutually dispensed and mutually beneficial.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hertwig?
Kind of echoing what a lot of the comments have been here, said already. Bottom line is, there was an agreement reached between the city and the developer. There's a contract. It's important to hold up, to abide by contracts. Granted, we are in a downturn economic environment right now. Could we delay portions of fulfilling that contract? Possibly, depending on what they are, what the impact is on the bottom line. What was the purpose of the project to begin with? Yes, portions of it could possibly have been delayed. Letting them out of it or giving them back money? No. Again, there was a contract signed. There was an agreement reached. It's important to hold up both ends of the contract.
Thank you, Joseph. And we will move on to our next audience question. We'll start with Kathleen Mcgowan. If you could wave a magic wand and do one thing to improve connectivity between I-2534 and downtown Loveland to increase travel, tourism, and spending, what would you like to do?
Would you repeat that, please?
Yes. Thank you, Darrell.
If you could,
I owe you one for that.
If you could wave a magic wand and do one thing to improve connectivity between I-2534 and the downtown Loveland to increase travel, tourism, and spending, what would you like to do?
Well, that's a lot in there. So I'm probably going to focus on getting people downtown from I-25 and 34. And, it's a major corridor. The other end of that is the end that goes towards Estes, but I'll focus on the one out east. And I think we could do a lot to attract people to downtown by having kiosks information available, visitor centers, signs that direct people, and things to bring them to downtown Loveland. One thing that's been suggested to me, and it was also in one of the studies that I read, was a theater, a movie theater, or another thing would be a community center, and I understand the Pulling Building is being considered for something along those lines. So I think that if I could wave my magic wand, it would be to get people to support that concept. End of story.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jen Brown?
Well, I think mine would be to improve the 402 and the Highway 34. I think 402 could be a major entrance into our community, and that any kind of beautification we could do between downtown and 402 would be wonderful. I also feel that there are things that could be done to mark places where you can turn to go downtown, kiosks that would tell you we have a historic downtown. But you can bring people downtown, but if it is not a destination, if there are not things to do, those are the things we really need to work on. We have great art, we have an incredible Rialto downtown. Those things need to be marketed, which I think could be done with some of the money from the lodging tax. So those are mine.
Thank you, Jen. Darrell Klassen?
Just recently, the Community Foundation brought a very distinguished speaker to this community, a downtown revitalization gentleman by the name of Bill Hudnett. He says some very wise things. Former mayor of Indianapolis did some revitalization there. Talking about the connectivity between I-25-34 and downtown. He made the point about trying to draw people off of I-25. What I'd like to do is draw them off of the 2 million people that come right through the middle of our community every summer, every year, and see if we can bring them 8 blocks north, south. In other words, our own parking study shows that our wayfinding is pathetic in this community. So let's spend some dollars on wayfinding, and instead of trying to bring them 4 or 5 miles west, let's just try and bring them 8 blocks north or south of the 2 million that come through our community. That's the way I would try to improve connectivity between I-25, 34, and downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam Konecki?
Jan kind of stole my thunder here, because the first thing I wrote down was 402. Whenever I come home from Denver, I always take 402. There's far less traffic, and more importantly, there's far less traffic lights to get stuck at. And 402 drops you off pretty close to the downtown area. So, kind of echo what's been said up here about marketing Loveland. I think it would be real important to, if you want to draw people into the downtown, let them know there's 2 ways to come in. You don't have to come straight down 34. You can come in on 402 and get right down there, probably with a lot less time. Again, I think that harkens back to, we need some kind of something to draw people's attention to the downtown, something to draw them into there. And I think marketing Loveland further out east would be a good way of doing that.
Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
Well, I'm going to go back to that magic wand idea. I like that idea. And I'm going to talk about other ways to get into downtown. And I think that, again, I brought it up before. People know I'm interested in this. Commuter and passenger rail on the existing BNSF line would be an economic boon to our downtown. It would be the destination where you would go in downtown. It would be something that raises property values and increases the activity in downtown. And I think that the ability to travel from Cheyenne, Wyoming in a single seat on a train in this beautiful countryside all the way to Denver and back again would be a draw in and of itself. And so I really do think that we need to be looking at that kind of transportation opportunity to encourage activity in our community.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. I guess two main issues here. You're talking about connectivity from east to downtown, and then how to get people downtown. On the connectivity issue, transportation has been mentioned, 402, 34, increasing access there. The other alternative to that, or in addition to that, some improvements to First Street. That could also carry some good east-west traffic, not from the interstate, but possibly internally carry some more traffic. And then again, it goes back to the destination. I love what's been proposed and been mentioned about some reuse of the Pulliam building, and then having some better signage for downtown, and just some marketing and destination type concepts.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hertwig?
Well, right now, I-34, it's just a pass-through corridor. It just allows people to go from I-25 up to Estes Park, Rocky Mountain National Park. Like Darrell was saying, we need to get them off of I-34. As far as another way into the town, Highway 402, yeah, that'd be great. There's not a lot on that end of town, really, to draw people off of I-25 and get them coming down 402. For waving a magic wand, maybe another entrance into Loveland from the north side, maybe extending, Crossroads, when they get off the Crossroads exit. They've got, the hotels, they got the ranch, they got Hooters, and they got, the Harley dealership. Maybe extend Crossroads, bring it into town. Give it another corridor to come into this town, and not I-34. Because I-34, like I said, that just allows people to pass through here and not even stop.
Great, thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
Well, I'd make myself taller, but that's just me. So I think one of the biggest things with Highway 34 is as Darrell said, all you need to do is get people a few blocks north or south. When I do it, I guess I look at it a little bit visually. I don't know that there's that much we can do coming in 34. 402 presents a huge opportunity to us to how we do either market ourselves at the interstate or bring people in. You're so close to downtown at that point that if we could just sort of slide 402 up a little bit across the bridge, you'd be here. With doing that, with bringing more people in, then we're also talking about, do we need a parking structure now? Are we bringing many more people in? Do we have the destinations to come? And to increase the connectivity, certainly on 34, I think it's going to be tough. I think our opportunity really is 402. I think it's an opportunity to do more to shunt traffic the direction we want them to go.
Great, thank you. Well, we've kind of touched on 402 a little bit, and we will talk about that a little bit more with the third question. And we will be starting back around at Jan this time. What are your thoughts on the annexations and the land purchase that has taken place on Highway 402?
Well, I thought it was great. I was here for the vote. I think that the purchase was a very important part of being able to control those intersections off of that interstate. We did not want that part of Loveland to become Johnstown, and we wanted to be able to control what went on at the entrance, our second entrance into Loveland. So I felt that was a very important purchase, and I do hope that at some point we will start developing that. I think it would be a great development area.
Thank you, Jan. Darrell Klassen?
Okay, here we go. I voted for that accusation, and if there was one vote that I could have back on the City Council, I'd love to have that one back. That particular purchase, I think, is going to come haunt us. We spent $6.7 million for a piece of property out there, the purpose of which was to guide the portals to the entry of Loveland. What happened 30 days after we bought that property? The corner across the street annexed to Johnstown. So not only did we pay too much for it, and as we come into these economic times, as time goes by, this particular payback to these CE funds from which we borrowed to buy that property for land we didn't need. We're talking about downtown revitalization. Talk about getting strung out all the way out to 402 and downtown. Certainly like to have put those marbles and those resources downtown, quite frankly.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam Konecki?
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on the annexations and the land purchase that has taken place on Highway 402?
I'm sorry to say this, but I'm not at all familiar with that with that purchase. Based on what Darrell has just said, though, I would just have to say that anytime the city is going to purchase anything, I think they need to very carefully consider what its potential outcome is, what its potential risk is, and just remember that we're not spending our money, we're spending the taxpayers' money.
Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
I think the city needs to be very careful with land speculation, and I think Darrell really clearly stated that. We bought high, and we're probably going to sell low. We're paying 5 years of interest out of the CEF on that. I think that it begs the question of regional cooperation at the interchange. I think we need to be talking with our neighbors rather than having our neighbors talking to willing sellers and driving up a land price. I think we're much better off if we come to the table with Johnstown and we talk about what our communities need at those intersections and the revenue that we can generate off of those intersections, and then we go enter into regional cooperative agreements where we are investing and receiving the funds in a shared manner rather than competing at the kitchen table with a willing seller. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Bob Schneider?
Well, to just echo much of what's already been said, if I have my timeline in history right, was this not a defensive purchase because of the loss at 25 and 34? And it goes to what Joan just said. Not cooperating, not having a good strategy, working with our neighbors, whether it's any of them around us, and I understand the strategy of controlling the intersection to reap the sales tax dollars, but there doesn't seem that there was a good strategy and a good vision to do it. It seems it was very much a defensive purchase, and hopefully in time it will turn out better than it looks today.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Hartwig?
Like I said earlier, we did pay too much for it. It was land that we didn't really need it. Okay, we're being defensive. Johnstown's gonna invade us. But we needed a plan. Okay, we're gonna buy this property. What are we gonna do with it? And not just build a fort to keep Johnstown out. And here it kind of goes to the subject of regionalism. It's been brought up, not here but elsewhere. If we're so afraid of these other communities, why don't we work with them? Let's join together. I'm a military man. I look at things strategically and tactically. There's strength in numbers. There's instead of trying to each little community, going, okay, I've got my little pile of acorns here for the winter, and heck with this other guy over here. Let's talk with everybody. Let's work with everybody, both a county and a state level.
Great, thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
Well, I drive by this every time I go to my house. We live on the south side of town, and I see the sign out there, land for sale. And I'm delighted to hear, Darrell, that you take that vote back, because I just think that it was a desperately bad thing to do. You feel like it's like the Sooner land rush, that boom, everybody's buying and selling and doing what they're doing. It's one of my philosophies too, that the city should not be in the landlord business or in the speculation business, and really I guess that's the heart of it, is that while we bought land in order to control it, certainly Johnstown is not supporting a lot of the land that they bought. Certainly looking at it a few years down the road, it wasn't the wisest thing to do. I think that's the caution to look back with. We do not need to be in the speculation business. The minute we buy land, we ought to find a way to get it off our books.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathleen Mcgowan?
Well, my understanding is that at this point, interest-only payments are being made on the land, if I'm not mistaken. And I recall having read in the Reporter Herald, the RH line, that someone had actually called to make an offer or called to find out the price on this land and was told literally make an offer. So there's no way to get around calling this what it is. It's a debacle. And I think that every point that's been made is excellent, that we as the city should be very cautious in purchasing land and should be disinclined to engage in land speculation. And I think most importantly, the lesson to be learned here is the spirit of regionalism is much better than an attitude of control. And that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
We'll move on to audience question number 4. And this one's a little specific, so I hope nobody needs me to help them out. Do you agree with the projects as prioritized in the City Capital Improvement Plan? And Darrell, you get to start with that one.
Essentially, yes, and council has met several times with in study sessions to analyze and to review the capital improvement plan. One of the problems that I have with it, we have just talked about previously, and that was 402, because we spent $6.7 million out there, and guess what was not in the 10-year capital improvement plan? The purchase of that 97 acres. I agree with the 10-year capitalization, the capital improvement program, but why don't we abide by it? And we did a serious violation out there, and I plead guilty, again, to having voted for that. So the 10-year capital improvement plan, it is just that. It is a plan. That doesn't mean, in military terms, that if a target of opportunity comes along, as times and circumstances change, that you can't step outside the CIP plan and make a good situation or investment.
Thank you, Darrell. Adam Konecki?
Could you repeat that again, too?
Yes. Do you agree with the projects as prioritized in the City Capital Improvement Plan?
Again, unfortunately, I'm not completely familiar with that. I've just started looking into the city budget, the capital improvement plan, the downtown redevelopment plan. So far, I haven't seen anything that I strongly disagree with. I know a few weeks ago when they voted on the parking garage downtown, that was something that I really thought that's something that we need to be spending money on right now. And I guess I would have to just, again, refrain back from completely answering that question and just say that anything that the city spends money on needs to be properly planned out and properly accounted for.
Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
Yes, I'm comfortable with the current plan. I think that there could be some more work done in ensuring that the residents of our community understand that plan, know what's going on with it, understand when there are opportunities to speak to it. But in general, I'm comfortable with it.
Bob Schneider?
Sure. Going over the capital improvement plan, again, remember reading that in the budget. I don't recall anything that jumped out at me that said, didn't seem to be in order. So, in theory, I think it makes sense what's on there. Just speaking to the process of knowing how things get on there, I'm comfortable with the process that we use to put projects on there and how they're prioritized. So, knowing the process, while I couldn't cite the items, I'd have to say I'm okay with it just because of the process that's used.
Joseph Hertwig?
I tend to agree with what Darrell had to say, except for the pleading guilty part. I had nothing to do with it. One line it reminded me of a line that was brought up during the mayoral debates, that if you do enough planning, you plan enough that you don't have to do anything. You're just continually in the planning stage, the planning process. So again, going on the lines of what Darrell was saying, let's implement some of these plans. It does, of course, once again, no plan is is engraved in stone. There's always room for modifications, improvements, whatever. So.
Thank you, Joseph. Hugh McKean?
Well, and I'm comfortable with what's in there. I think the thing that occurs to me is just what happened in the meeting last night. How much flexibility do we really have in not just where we prioritize things, but what are we desirous of doing? What are we desirous of making capital expenditures on? And certainly, one of the things that struck me last night so much was the idea that if we're falling short of the total completion, how much flexibility could we say, let's take some of those capital improvement monies and bring them over to something that comes new to the table. And that to me, I think, is where indeed it's a plan. It's a way of looking forward. But I think also we have to keep in mind that there are those opportunities that come up. And last night, had we been able to throw another $500,000 to it and finish this what was then a $12,035,000 job, what would that have said to the citizens of Loveland? And really come along and say, okay, we're willing to come in and be a partner as well.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathleen Mcgowan?
Looking at something entitled Current CIP Funding, 2009 adopted is $743,340 on parking structure design. And I think to the extent that that's part of the CIP, I have some concerns. Further down the line in 2011, there's $4,212,000 for structure construction. 2012 through the 2015, there's a projected $2 million each year for infrastructure improvements. So I have to say that without knowing more about what infrastructure improvements are contemplated, and again whether there's flexibility in the design, I would not be able to say that I'm comfortable with it because I don't feel I'm well enough informed to say that.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jan?
I agree with the capital expansion plan. I think that, if I had a magic wand in that department, I think our Chelsen Center, the library, the museum, all of those things that we've wanted. Mahaffey Park's been on the books forever. And every time the budget is cut, every time we go into a recession, some of those things have to be given up because safety comes first. But and with the plan that we have for downtown, I do not believe that we will ever spend $700,000 on a plan for a parking structure out of the city budget. I just don't believe that will happen. But I do believe that the plan is done well and it is reviewed numerous times during the year. So.
I've gotten a nod from Brian that all of you were so good about sticking to the 1 minute rule. We actually have time to do an additional audience question. So I hate to put anyone on the spot. We had so many good questions that we wanted to get as many in as we could. So we'll start with Adam. How would you suggest that Loveland and the downtown be marketed as a destination?
Wow. Back to what was said earlier in the meeting, as it is right now, it's a pass-through to Estes Park, to Rocky Mountain National Park, and I don't know exactly the right method to draw people down to Loveland or down to the downtown area. I think in a lot of ways it's going to have to grow first. It's going to have to become more of a destination, more of something that people want to go down there. They want to see what's down there. They want to see the museum. They want to see the sculptures. And kind of until that happens, it's not going to be real possible to market Loveland. Beyond that, I really don't know what would be the single best method of doing that.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Joan Schaefer?
Can I ask you to repeat that question for me?
Absolutely. How would you suggest that Loveland and downtown Loveland be marketed as a destination?
I think the key to downtown is the arts and culture. I think the community being a gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park, I think is a critical component to being able to successfully market the town. I think that in marketing the town, I think we should be looking at folks who would really be enjoying the outdoor activities as well as the cultural activities. So those would be sort of the two primary focus areas to market and to encourage growth or encourage visitors. So then I think in the actual how you do it is you go after those kinds of products out there that would be the place to advertise and to let people know that you've got what they want. So whether that be in outdoor magazines or whether we send people to conferences, it would be those kinds of things.
Thank you, Jim. Bob Schneider.
Tricky button there. How should Loveland and downtown be marketed as a destination? A couple things come to mind. And from a small businessman's perspective, I can come up with a lot of ideas and thoughts of how it should be marketed and what should be done. And then, as I'm sitting up here, I'm thinking, well, as a policy and as a council, that's different to me than how it should be marketed. So, I guess I would like to see it be marketed through some of the organizations, whether it's Engaging Loveland, Downtown Loveland Association, through the bed tax, the 2B, if that passes. So just creating the means from those focused organizations to do the marketing, to get folks to stop in Loveland and enjoy what we have, the tech.
Great, thanks, Bob. Joseph Hertwig?
Well, as far as marketing goes, I'm a sailor and a pilot, so my vocabulary comes to about 400 words. 200 of those probably can't be repeated in public. It's the businesses, if we get our real ideas and our real knowledge of how to market and what to market from the business community, because they're the ones that have the vision, have the knowledge, have the experience as to what's needed. Just little things, you come down I-34 and you see a little teeny tiny sign, Sculpture Park over here. Well, how about a bigger sign, Sculpture Park over here? Maybe put a traffic circle in there and make them, go off. Just make them mad. That way they'll, But that's something that the private community or the business community needs to look at more too.
Thanks, Joseph. Hugh McKean.
Is there any reason we can't just end Highway 34 in downtown? Really big parking lot.
Then we have to build a fort against Justice Park.
Well, I think that, again, I defer to people who market for a living. And one of the things that I've heard, and each year at the Sculpture Show, I listen to a lot of people who are coming. This is my supply of people who are coming here on purpose. And a lot of them say, wouldn't it be nice to have a place to stay downtown? So I think that part of what Adam said really rings true. Wouldn't it be nice to have a place to stay? We have some bed and breakfast. We have a few other things, but to bring people down there who not only are coming, but are going to occupy one of those beds downtown. So I think that's a big part of it. I think that there are different marketing plans for a whole range of people coming here for different reasons. And I don't think that it would be too bad to just, have the big chevron sign as I-34 or Highway 34 stops right there.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathleen McGowan.
I had the benefit of attending a Loveland downtown meeting, I think it was last week, and they have this great retail market analysis, and I'm going to cheat and read a little of it to you. In a nutshell, Loveland basically has art and the historic significant indicators, draws, if you will. And it says that we need a niche identity. So that could be our identity. And then it talks about recruitment and retention efforts, and as part of an overall marketing thing, a marketing strategy of making downtown a destination, that it would be beneficial to have a group like a business improvement district to take the lead in recruitment and retention. And then it cites an authority, which is a book called Turning Around Downtown by a C.B. Lineberger. I haven't read the book, but I think it would be helpful to draw on sources like that to form plans.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Jan Brown?
Can you read the question again?
Absolutely. How would you suggest that Loveland and downtown be marketed as a destination?
Well, I believe that downtown is largely a cultural center for our community. We have the Rialto, which draws from all over. We have our museum, which does a lot of arts and history for our community. I was at the Visitors Information Table for the Oregon California Trails Association, and I was amazed at how many different things they ask for that you could send. I mean, they wanted the history. They wanted to know where your museum was. I mean, we had people asking for a hairdresser, and they wanted it to be downtown because they were coming down here. There are many ways to market our community if we can bring those people into the community. And that's why the lodging tax is so important for us.
Thank you, Jen. Darrell Klassen?
Oh, have I been waiting for this one. How would Loveland be marketed as a destination? A walkable, vibrant place in which to live and work. We could be the sculpture capital of the United States. It's a theme in itself. And if somebody would give me the choice to come up with $10 million for a parking garage or $10 million on a bond issue to create sculpture, to create the market in our town, we've got the foundries here, we have the artists here, and start with $10 million of the sculpture all over our city and market ourselves, we make ourselves a destination. And oh, how I would love to do that. I could support that, and I think this community would support that. The sculpture capital of the United States. A destination. It would make us a destination.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're all finished with questions. No more surprise questions for you guys. So we'll move on to closing statements. And again, those will be 1 minute each just to wrap up your remarks or address anything you didn't get to. And since we started with Jan for opening and moved this way, I think we'll start with Kathleen for the closing remarks and move this way. So Kathleen?
I think we can all agree that a primary concern for Loveland is economic growth and development. And if it were so simple as just to create jobs, then our job would be easy indeed. But we have to balance the need for job creation and economic growth against our duties as public officials to both earn and keep the public trust. And the way that we do that is by being independent thinkers and by having integrity and sincerity in our decision-making processes and being balanced. I think my experience and background as an attorney, as a mediator, and with a degree in finance ideally suits that function and those skills, and I look forward to representing Ward 4 on Loveland City Council. I'd like to thank the Downtown Loveland Association and the Chamber and the audience for attending tonight. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hugh?
Well, I'd also thank the Chamber and the Loveland Downtown Association, and again, I just thank everybody up here. The amount and variety of ideas up here are wonderful, and I think we've heard a lot about people saying, oh, there's a great field of candidates this year, and there really is. I've genuinely enjoyed listening to a lot of the ideas coming up. What I'm really left with, though, is really just to say also thank you to the council that's been before us. Sitting through the meeting last night, watching how effectively, I think everybody works together, whatever views they hold, and coming back again. I think that's where I'm looking at serving Ward 3 is being a part of a group that works so well together. And so I look forward to the opportunity to serve, and I just genuinely say thank you. Thank you for all the work that you guys have done, and thanks to all the candidates up here for their willingness to serve.
Thank you, Hugh. Joseph?
As far as the city council goes, do what we can locally, to make a more business-friendly environment, to bring the jobs here with the fees, the taxes, the regulation. And then to that end, what we can't do, then we need to join together with the other communities around us. We got Greeley, we got Fort Collins, we've got Loveland, we got Johnstown. Sorry about the fort. We got Estes Park. Join together is a larger group, and then get together with the state representatives to work on a state level to do the same thing as far as tax. Reducing taxes, fees, regulations, again, make it a more friendly environment, and work on the national level as well. We're not just a little tiny pocket here in the world. Bring the jobs back that left the USA and went abroad. The HP jobs, the manufacturing jobs, they didn't just disappear. They just went to greener pastures. We need to make pastures greener again here. Bring them back. And again, thank you, Chamber of Commerce, and thank you, everybody up here. Great talent.
Thank you, Joseph. Bob Schneider?
Thank you. It seems everyone has said that service, and that's why I'm running. I think it's important to be in community service and to serve in the community that I live, work, and have my business in. As I've said before, over the last year, I've seen too many of my friends, my neighbors, and my clients have to leave Loveland to go follow a job in another part of the country. There's just something that's so wrong with that. I guess that's at the heart of it. That's what's motivated me to want to be up here, to bring back some of those jobs into our community and make Loveland the vibrant, economic, and diverse, wonderful place that we all know it can and will be. I want more and better jobs for my neighbors, my friends, and frankly, I want my kids to have jobs so they're not moving away when they get out of school and go to work. So love to serve the residents of Loveland and Ward 2, and thanks for your time. It's been an honor to be up here.
Thank you, Bob. Joan Schaefer?
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and for those who are listening from home. And I also thank the Chamber and the Downtown Loveland Association for sponsoring this event. I think it's really critical. I'm a competent and capable person for doing this job, and I have the background and the experience that I think is necessary to serve our community well. I'm a consensus builder, and I'm also a financially or a fiscally prudent decision maker. I will look out for the taxpayer. I think that's really important. I'm a supporter of the arts and culture in this community, and I'm also active in downtown as a business owner. And I think that I will bring some fresh ideas to the council. I will work cooperatively with others and represent our community to the best of my ability. So thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Adam Konecki?
In closing, I would like to say this. At last night's council meeting, about 20 concerned citizens showed up to voice their concern over an issue. 11 of them publicly spoke out about this issue. Not one person spoke in favor of it. As the debate over it continued, I heard several of the councilmen begin to chastise those who took time out of their lives and away from their families to make their voice heard. One councilman in particular went so far as to say that he did not like the remarks he heard from the audience and therefore would vote the exact opposite of how they wanted. I want everyone to know that when I'm elected to this council, I will not treat my constituency with that level of disrespect. I will do my best to represent you because you don't work for me. I work for you, the citizens of Loveland, Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Darrell Klassen?
So much of our debate and discussion this evening has been centered on downtown revitalization. and it is very, very important to our community. My method of going about things is to look at those who have been successful and study those who have been unsuccessful. Do's and don'ts. And in this downtown revitalization, I would offer some suggestions. What is downtown Estes Park? Maybe not quite a correct parallel to study, but nevertheless look at them. What do they do? Their downtown is very vibrant, granted a certain part of the year. Let's take a look at Cheyenne. Run up and take a look at Cheyenne and see what they do with the parking garage. Go study that one. I have a brother who lives in McKinney, Texas. McKinney, Texas, comparable to Loveland. They are resounding successful. Let's go see what they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Darrell. Jan Brown.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I'm thrilled with all the enthusiasm there is for the interest in everyone running this year. This is the third forum that we've done, and it's been great. And I hope that I will be able to serve you, and I'm looking for your vote. I love this community. I love downtown, and I love all parts of this community. I'm in Ward 1, which is northwest, and I would also like to see things develop out there so that, you know, we're not having to drive 5 miles for a grocery store. But I would look at the community as a whole, downtown, Centera, and west, and I believe that I would serve well and that I have the experience to do that. So thank you all for coming again.
I want to thank all the candidates for being here and following the rules very well, and I'll turn it over to Brian.
Well, thank you, Kristen, and thank you, our wonderful candidates. On behalf of the Loveland Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Loveland Association, I'd like to have you folks join me in a round of applause thanking each one of our candidates for being here. Regardless what the future may hold for each one of them, I think that they have honored our community very well for just taking the time to be out here, to study the issues, to share their thoughts and perspective on how we can overcome some of the obstacles and also continue some of the successes we've seen as a community. I'd also like to make sure that we acknowledge our wonderful moderator tonight, Kristen Taddy. So if you would mind joining me on behalf of our two organizations, I'll thank you. And I know you folks are probably eager to get home, but I would like to make one more thank you and a couple of brief announcements. We have an unsung volunteer that's been sitting up here running our timer, and that's Jeff Coleman, who happens to be an ambassador with the Loveland Chamber. He's volunteered his time to come out and help us, so I'd like to also thank Jeff. And I would like to leave you with two quick announcements. The lodging tax certainly got brought up tonight and was expanded on in many ways. We see that as a very important issue for this community, and the Loveland Chamber of Commerce will be holding a forum on this on Thursday, October 22nd from 7:30 to 9 a.m. We will have a panel of at least 3 individuals on that, talking about the lodging tax and its potential impact for this city, talking about some of the obstacles and different reasons on maybe why it isn't a good thing, as well as why we think it should be supported. The second thing that I would also throw out is the Chamber is launching a brand new website. You will see that tomorrow. With that, you will find a great deal of information about this community and what is happening from a public policy standpoint with information about our candidates, some of that you're already seeing here. We are also collecting the questions that were not addressed here. We're going to put them out. I'm putting a little pressure on our candidates. If you don't mind, I would like to forward these questions to you via email and allow you the chance to respond to those questions, and we will happily put those up on our brand new website so that way you can see those responses. I don't want you to feel slighted for taking the time to get these great questions out. So with that, I'd like to just say thank you to you, and thank you to our audience for coming out, and also to our audience that is on TV observing this. So thank you very, very much.